もしもし、時坂ですが。
おう、レイジ。お前今からちょっと出てこられるか。
Osmi's throaty drawl crept into my ears through the receiver.
なんだよ、やぶから棒に。
This was not the type of wake-up call I wanted.
前の事件について聞かせてほしくてな。
Osmi went on despite my blatant irritation.
だったら、ヤギ沼なりなんなり、総一の人間に聞けばいいだろ
I didn't see why he needed me for that.
俺はまだ休暇中だからな。連中は他の作業で忙しいらしい。
う。わかったよ。話すなら直接会った方がいいが、うちに来るか。
いや、吉祥寺の駅前で待っていてくれ。
なんだよ。こんな朝っぱらから京子のところか
バカ野郎。会社の一人が画廊をやってたんだろうが。
Oh, this is about Sasakura then.
案内するのは構わないが、休暇中のやつが勝手に入り込んでいいのか？
許可はきちんと取ってやる。いくつかやらねばならんこともあるからな。
If it's for work, then just bring one of your investigator buddies along, damn it. I drove to Kichijoji and parked at the edge of the station's traffic circle. It was still cold out, so I switched on the car's heater. With the way this weather was going, it wouldn't surprise me if we had another bout of snow or two in store for us. At the very least, I doubt spring would be gracing us with an early arrival. Popped a cig between my lips and motioned to light it up, only to pick up the car's ashtray and take it outside instead after a little thought. Smoke rose toward the cloudy heavens. Managed to take things easy the last few days, since the case was all solved, not at all, on paper anyway. In reality, though, we still had plenty of unanswered questions. Still, maybe it's about time I get back to my mission. Things would be much easier now that I had Osmi back to lend me a hand, that was for sure. Not to say that I had any problems with Yaginuma, though.
何人の車で黄昏てるんだ。
Ultimately, my thoughts were ground to a halt by Osmi's arrival.
お、来たか。
Stepped out my cigarette and put the ashtray back in the car.
まずは笹倉とかいうやつの店に向かいたい。
井の頭街道を少し行ったところだ。線路沿いの小道に車は止められると。
案内を頼む。
Osmi nodded and opened the driver's door.
って、なんでお前が運転しよう。
もともと俺の車じゃねえか。
案内するんだったら俺が運転する方が道理にかなってるだろう。
てめえが助手席から指示すりゃいいだろう。
Osmi took that chance to slip into the driver's seat. Son of a bitch.
ぶつけるんじゃねえぞ。
もともと俺の車だバカ野郎。
I simply shrugged and got into the passenger seat. We reached the gallery in under 5 minutes. Osmi parked in the neighboring alley and went around to the front of the gallery.
ここか。
Osmi produced a key.
やらなきゃならねえことはいくつかあるが。
鑑定だって、間宮心臓の絵はもう持ちだ。
他の作家の絵が残ってるんだろ？
Alright, of course. I've been thinking of the ones that were relevant to the murders.
それにしたってほとんど贋作じゃないのか？
引き取り手のいなくて価値があるものは競売にかけるそうだからな。そこに贋作を出すわけにもいかねえだろ。
Osmi opened the door and lumbered inside. The place looked a whole lot gloomier now that it had lost its owner. Specks of dust cast against the faint streams of sunlight breaking through the windows danced into the air with each step we took.
見たところ結構な量の絵があるが。
背にはならねえだろうが、まあ少しずつやることになりそうだが、価値がありそうなのはある。
俺に聞くなよ。
I was the exact wrong person to ask about art.
贋作を作った張本人に来てもらえば楽なんだがな。
送検された後じゃいろいろと面倒だからな。絵を持って行った方が早い。
Osmi removed a painting from the wall.
車に詰めるだけ持っていくぞ。
最初からそのつもりだったのなら、俺の車じゃなくて警察車両を持ってこいよ。
You mean my car?
俺の車だ。
Osmi and I traded barbs as we carried paintings over to the car.
5枚くらいしか乗せられないな。
Frames were a lot bulkier than expected, so trying to force any more in the back seats would have likely ended with the paintings getting damaged.
そうなると本物らしい絵を持っていきてえが。
だからわかるわけないだろう。
All we really could do was pick some at random.
しかしここで外車を殺した星、まだ学生だって言うじゃねえか。
ああ、
I doubted he knew she was one of Yukari's friends from the way he talked. Not that I needed to tell him, considering he had nothing to do with the case.
報告書には敵討ちと書いてあったが、
普通はわからないさ。
Ordinary people ever had a need for vengeance, and that wouldn't exactly make them very ordinary. those that did have said needed, and those that did have said need, oh, the need for, yeah, okay. And those that did have said need tended to grope for other solutions to their issue instead after clearing their heads.
感情が先走った結果だろう。戻ることを全く考えていなかったようだから。
One could say she'd just been true to her heart. That was something many couldn't claim, though it wasn't exactly laudable in her case.
お前はどうなんだ？
失ったものが戻ってくるのならば迷わずそうしているさ。
誰もがそう考えていりゃいいんだが。
Ozumi scratched his head.
結局のところ敵討ちなんてのは残された人間の自己満足でしかない。
Indeed. That's why I'd been so satisfied when Yukiko's murderer was arrested. Then again, some might say I'd failed to get revenge because he'd gotten cuffed instead.
拳銃を隠し持っていたやつが言えるセリフじゃねえな。
知らねえよ。
Took another painting off the
お
wall.
前は分からないと言っていたが、例えば京子が殺されたりしたらどうするつもり？
Ozumi gasped. Backed away from the painting and sat on the floor, expecting a shiner in response. In fact, a part of me believed I deserved it. After all, it was an undeniable fact that she'd gotten hurt on my watch just 2 months ago.
そうならねえように守るだけだ。
But Ozumi simply shook his head. Yeah, he's right.
やっぱりお前がいると心強いよ。
I meant that in all sincerity, too.
あいつが刺されたのはお前のせいじゃねえだろ。
Ozumi gave me a hearty slap on the back. God damn, that hurt like a bitch. I think I preferred a knuckle sandwich instead. Oh great, more phone calls.
もしもし、時坂探偵事務所ですが。
あ、まさきさん、今暇？
Fuyumi? Fuyumi's voice came out the other end of the line.
何ですか、やぶから棒に。
She's the last person I was expecting a call from.
ちょっと話がしたくてね。で、暇なんでしょ？
いや、暇という。
He still had questioning passerby at train stations per his current routine on the
じ
agenda.
ゃあ、朽木病院にいるからよろしくね。
Great. Bold of you to assume you had an option with Fuyumi. What the? She hung up on me.
はあ。
She didn't care about what I had to say at all, did she? Now that she'd already thanked him, he couldn't just turn her down either. I mean, you could, you'd just be an asshole. Thus, Muskie picked his jacket up off the sofa, donned it, and left the agency. Chiki Hospital's lobby was swamped with people that morning. Muskie moseyed on over to the psych ward, figuring if he found Michiru, he'd find Fuyumi too. Eventually, he spotted Fuyumi at the department in question, sitting on a bench outside of an examination room.
あ、来た。
来ましたよ。
Muskie took a seat next to Fuyumi.
食べる？
Fuyumi abruptly presented him with a bag of
い
treats.
ただきます。
The bag was loaded with fried dough cakes.
で、何があったんですか？
Fuyumi seemed fairly chipper, so we doubted anything had happened to either Yukiko or Michiru.
あのさ、魚住さんって知ってる？
魚住？誰ですか？
Never even heard the name before.
ほら、時坂さんの昔馴染みだっていうおまわりさんよ。
あ、魚住さんというんですか。
It was only then that Muskie realized Yukari hadn't given him his name.
それでね、どうも葉月ちゃんに惚れてるみたいなのよ。
Is that really what you're trying to do, Fuyumi? Like, oh, maybe Masaki has eyes for Kyoko, huh? Let's see if there's anything there. See if he gets agitated by Uozumi's presence. Still trying to hook Kyoko up with someone, huh? Had nothing to do with you or the daughters, it was just all...
は
Muskie, uncertain where she was going with this, could only nod.
葉月ちゃんのまんざらじゃない様子なんだけどね。ほら、時坂さんだっているじゃない？
あ、は
ちょっと聞いてるの
Fuyumi furrowed her
あ、
brow.
聞いてますよ。ただ、そういうのはよくわかりませんから。
まあ、そうでしょうね。
Fuyumi sighed in exasperation.
とにかく、どうも三角関係っぽいのよ、葉月ちゃんをめぐっての。
Muskie just nodded dumbly. He feared Fuyumi would get on his case again if he said anything.
時坂さんと魚住さん、どっちが葉月ちゃんにふさわしいと思う？
How the hell would he know if he's never even met Wozmi? I'm sure he's gonna say the same thing. He's like, how could I possibly know that?
そんなこと言われても。
Sasuke hadn't even met Wozmi. All he'd heard was that he was a nice guy. However, Yukari's plaudits were nowhere near enough to paint a picture of someone. Yeah, that's true. Honestly, yeah. You ask Yukari about, like, any of her, past friends who aren't here anymore that are locked up. I mean, not the dead ones, but like, well, hell, even some of the dead ones, right? Because like, Orihime from the first game, it's like, yeah, you could be like, oh, she's a nice person. It's like she was running a, what was it? It was a prostitution ring, wasn't it? Pretty sure that's what it was. So she had that going for her. Like, oh, what about your pal Yukiko? Oh, she's a nice person. She killed people. Straight up killed people. What about your old friend Kohane? Oh, she's a nice person. She's got mental issues. Presumed might have killed people. We don't know for sure on that one, but has definitely assaulted people. What about your old pal Chie? Oh, she's a nice person. She probably killed people. I mean, we don't have definitive evidence yet, but she probably killed people. So yeah, Yukari's praises. It's like if Yukari doesn't like someone, that's a pretty big red flag. But if she does, that's not necessarily, a sign that all's good.
時坂さんと葉月さんでいいんじゃないですか？
That was all Masuki could think to say.
私もそう思うんだけどね。
Amy rested her chin in her hands and felt quiet.
何かあるんですか？
あの二人、お互いがお互いを受け入れられなくなっているような感じなのよ。
どういうことですか？
Masuki wasn't following at all.
なんていうのかな。一番になれないのが分かっている状況じゃないかしら。時坂さんにはどうしても忘れられない人がいるようだから。
That made sense to him. Deiji's heart was likely still yoked to the girl who had been called Rokushiki. And Kyoko didn't dare take any further steps than she already had because she knew that. So that's the way things are. Suddenly the door in front of them opened. Michiru, accompanied by Kaede, stepped out and regarded the bear.
いや、久しぶり。
Suddenly Michiru backed off and hid behind Kaede for some reason.
君は彼女に
何もしてませんよ。
Masuke hastily shook his head.
まさかうちの娘に手を出したとかはないわよね。
Jimmy seized Masuke by the collar.
そんなわけないじゃないです。
わからないわよ。人畜無害そうな顔してそういうことは手が早そうだもの。
そんなことはありませんよ。
Yeah, who do you think he is? An AG? The one who actually gets close to Masuke, not Masuke, to Michiru? Despite his protest, though, Masuke couldn't look Fuyumi in the eye.
イチャつくのは帰ってからにしてくれんかね。
いや、そんなつもりはありませんってば。
Masuke frantically rose to his feet. Michiru stole Masuke's spot as soon as it opened. Oh, Michiru. She caused drama just so she could get her bench spot.
疲れたの？
Michiru nodded and leaned against Fuyumi. Huh, well, what do you know? No one ever questioned that they're mother and daughter after seeing them like this.
ああ、そうだ、まさきくん。
いえ。
申し訳ないが、今週の土曜に来てもらえるかな。
わかりました。
Masuke couldn't refuse, much as he didn't feel like attending the sessions.
では、私は他の人の診療があるので。
Maybe you're patient.
ありがとうございました。
Fuyumi bowed as Kaede strolled off.
じゃあ自分も。
あ、待って。
Fuyumi grabbed Masuke's sleeve as he turned to leave.
日療病室まで送ってくるから外で待っていてくれる？
それは構いませんが。
What else could she want from me?
違います。
Masuke waited outside the hospital until Fuyumi emerged from the entrance all decked out in a jacket.
ごめんね、待たせちゃって。
まだ何かあるんですか？
ちょっと月世界まで付き合ってちょうだい。
Fuyumi took off as soon as she said that.
それは構いませんが。
Knowing Fuyumi, she probably wanted to pick up their conversation from where it left off. Thus, Masuke went along quietly, figuring she would have dragged him kicking and screaming even if he'd refused.
こんにちは、はずきちゃん。
いらっしゃい。あら、珍しい組み合わせでもないわね。
Kyoko smiled awkwardly when she saw Fuyumi and Masaki.
どうも。
Masaki gave a little bow until Fuyumi dragged him over to a table at the other end of the cafe.
どうしたの？カウンターだって空いてるのに。
ちょっと内緒話をね。
あら。コーヒー2つでいいかしら？
よろしくお願いします。
Masaki waited until Kyoko was out of earshot before whispering into Fuyumi's ear.
絶対誤解を生んでますよ。
誤解？何が？
Fuyumi stared at Masaki, looking confused.
いや、
I must be reading too much into this.
別にそんな仲じゃないのにね。
分かってるんじゃないですか。
お待たせ。
Masaki held his tongue when Kyoko came over with their orders.
ありがとう、はずきちゃん。
それではごゆっくり。
Kyoko went back to the counter with a smile.
で、実際はなぜここに来たんですか？
来てると思ったんだけどね。
However, Masaki and Fuyumi were the only customers at the moment.
もしかして。
That was the only person who makes sense given the context.
当たり。
Fuyumi smirked mischievously.
まだ会ったことないんでしょ？
まあそうですけど。
In all honesty, Masaki had a feeling he'd be seeing a lot more of this Ozumi in the near future if the man really was a cop, but he decided to keep that from Fuyumi.
仕事なんじゃないですか？
It was a Thursday after all, and he is working. Is that with Reiji, as a matter of fact? Wait, is it the same day? I think so. Besides, there were probably a plethora of police officers who worked weekends too.
前に盗み聞きした時には報酬一杯は休みみたいなこと言ってたわよ。
自分の代わりに探偵やってみます。
え、お仕事取っちゃってもいいの？
やっぱり良くないです。
Hell yes. Hell yes. I'd love Fuyumi to be my assistant at the detective agency. Suddenly the door opened, revealing a modern-day
あ
Goliath.
ら、いらっしゃい。
おう。
The man took a seat at the counter. Fuyumi nudged Masaki with her
あ
elbow.
の人が。
Masaki could already tell he was looking at the fabled Ozumi in the flesh. The man was indeed mantled in the aura of an investigator, though Masaki would have thought him some gangster if he hadn't known better.
おう。何見てんだ？
Ozumi glowered at Masaki the moment they made eye contact.
いや、
Masaki hastily glanced at the floor.
ダメよ、魚住くん。彼は時坂くんのところで働いている人なんだから。
No sooner had Kyoko told Ozumi off than did he ease up.
レイジの？ああ、そういや、あんなことも言ってたな。
正木智之です。
おう。俺は魚住京造ってんだ。一応、総一に復帰することになってる。レイジのやつについてりゃ、現状で会うこともあるだろうな。
He offered his right hand, which Masaki accepted. Unsurprisingly, his grip was as strong as a
今
bear's.
日はお仕事じゃなかったの？
Kyoko cocked her head.
ん？うん、まあ、さっきまではな。
Ozumi scratched his cheek and hurriedly looked away.
非番のやつに警視庁まで行かせられねえって、レイジのやつがな。
そもそも時坂くんはおまわりさんですらないじゃない。
Kyoko heaved an exasperated
い
sigh.
や、俺だってそう言ったんだぜ。
Umi giggled at seeing Ozumi so flustered.
いいから、コーヒー出してくれ。
はいはい、ただいま。
Kyoko served Ozumi a cup and poured coffee into it as if she had prepared them in advance.
いい感じよね。
Umi smirked and whispered in Masaki's ear. Personally, Masaki didn't think he had the same eye for relationships as her. Well, on the bright side, at least this Ozumi doesn't seem like a bad guy.
そういえば魚住くん、お部屋は決まった？
まだだ。まあ、今決まってもすぐに入れるわけじゃねえからな。
はずきちゃん、ここの上って空いてないの？
なっ！
Whoa! Ozumi face was so red that one could be forgiven for thinking he'd had a bucket of paint dumped over his head.
空いてなくはないけど、どうする？
どうするもこうするもだな。そういうわけにもいかないだろうが。
He certainly has a pure heart despite his rough exterior, doesn't he? At least that was Masaki's impression when seeing Ozumi panicking, his visage red as the lobster's.
部屋を探してくる。後でまた寄るからな。代金はその時だ。
Ozumi fled the cafe faster than a mouse from a cat.
ああ、慌てちゃって。
そろそろお部屋が決まればいいんだけど。
さっき言った通り、はずきちゃんが住まわせてあげればいいじゃない。
それはまだ無理よ。
Kyoko smiled awkwardly and shook her head.
あらそうなの？
例えばそうね、茅原さんが正樹くんを家に住まわせると言われたら。
ないわね。
I'd say hell no, of course. Umi shook her head as soon as she looked at Masaki. Though he figured that was coming, it still hurt to hear from the horse's mouth.
でも魚住さんだったらこの人と違って収入だってあるし。
そういう問題はないわよ。
Kyoko smiled sadly.
でもなんて言えばいいのかしらね。まだ他にはっきりさせなきゃいけないことがあるから。
She must be talking about Tokisaka. However, Masaki didn't dare voice that thought. Interesting, interesting. I left my car in the MPD's parking lot and waited out in front of the building proper. Considering when I called, she should be here any minute.
レイジ、
Turned around. Stella was right there in the entryway to the MPD.
なんだ、もう入っていたのか。
外は寒いから。
Stella darted over to me.
では
まだ車の中だから、取りに行ってから。
Not like I had any contacts elsewhere. Stella and I entered CID Section 1 with the paintings from the car in tow. I'd already let Yaginuma know we were coming, so he was there waiting for us.
それが贋作ですか。
まだそうと決まったわけじゃねえよ。
Stella studied the
わか
painting.
るか。
有名なのはなさそうだから。
Stella counted the paintings.
これだけ？
車が小さかったからな。価値のあるものがあるのなら、そこの警視殿が残りも持ってきてくれるさ。
I gestured to Yaginuma, who was regarding us from behind with his arms crossed.
まあ、盗難の恐れもありますからね。
今度はそうならないように気をつけ。
Carried the paintings into the interrogation room. No one would know which ones were fakes. It'd be Sei Maizono. She was still being kept at the MPD, even though her case had been turned over to the prosecutor's office. So while I did need permission, it wasn't all that hard to get an audience with her. The door suddenly opened, and in stepped Sei Maizono under Yaginuma's watchful eye.
どうも。
Sei warily plopped straight down to a chair, perhaps exhausted from the prosecution's round-the-clock questioning.
早速で申し訳ないが、
Picked a random painting from the pile and set it atop the table.
店に飾っていた絵ね。
これは本物か。
少なくとも私が描いたものではないわ。
Sei snorted.
あの店に贋作しかないと思っていたのかしら。
そこまで疑っていたわけじゃないが。
I lined up the paintings and showed them to her.
どれも本物よ。多分。美術学校の学生よ。
Sei shrugged.
では、あなたが作ったものはどこに？
あの店にはおそらく残ってないわ。調布の方もそう。贋物を手元にずっと置いておくのよ。
全部海外に売った？
Stella suddenly chimed in.
おそらくね。彼の入金記録などを調べれば。
Knowing Yaginuma, he'd probably just say that wasn't his department's job.
あそこは一応画廊だったから。若い画家の絵を展示していたのよ。
Sei pointed to a landscape painting. I handed it over as she asked.
ほんと。値段のつかない絵ばかり。
Sei took a long, hard look at the painting. It was only then that I noticed the signature scribbled on its corner. Kei Sasakura.
その絵は
価値のない絵よ。技術的にもね。
Absolutely worthless.
それは。
そう。
Sei backed off without so much as a fight. She probably knew it was a pipe dream to begin with.
好きだった。
Stella quietly addressed Sei after realizing who was responsible for the painting. Yet Sei had regarded the painting for a long time in spite of her claim. Great, more phone calls. It's always phone calls. The living room came alive with the shrill ringing of the phone. Got out of my room and picked it up.
はい、もしもし。
もしもし、時坂さんのお宅でしょうか？
Play it again.
もしもし、時坂さんのお宅でしょうか？
Male voice. Sounds a bit young.
もしもし、時坂さんのお宅でしょうか？
It sounds familiar though. Where have I heard this voice? I swear I know I've heard this voice before. Unless you're gonna be like, no, it's just some random cop that's calling from the... No. They wouldn't include the voice. Because he's gotten phone calls from the police department where they don't include a voice. He's just like, hello? Oh, really? Okay. Right? It's only when it's someone important whose voice is worth hearing that they include voice lines. What's his name? What's his name? Fumiya. There we go. That's who it is. It's Fumiya. I know I could have waited in like 2 lines. They'll tell me like, Director Fumiya? Director Kuchiki? Is that you? It's Fumiya. I just had to like listen to it a little bit. Like, male. I know I've heard it. I know this voice. Give me a second. So why is Fumiya calling us? Like, I'm sure we're going to find out, right? Either he's going to tell us over the phone or he's going to call us to the hospital or something. I'm trying to think before the answer is revealed to me, right? It's part of the fun of these kind of games, right? Even with the smallest details, like, why? Theorize. But honestly, Fumiya just seems like a real curveball. I wonder why he's calling us. Wait, I recognize his voice.
そうですが、Fumiya-san?
It wasn't every day I got a call from this guy, that much was sure.
何かありましたか?
I shook my head in an attempt to urge the dregs of sleep from my brain. He didn't sound panicked or anything, so I probably didn't need to worry too much, but better safe than sorry. What happened?
ええ、それが何か?
綿貫先生が斉藤先生との面談を望んでいるんです。なんでも近々裁判が始まるという噂を耳にしたそうで。
Saito. In other words, Rokushiki. It had already been nearly 2 years and he still hadn't been handed over to the prosecutor's office, so I personally doubted his trial would be anytime soon. In that case, had word he was about to be transferred to prison gotten out and involved from there?
自分にはそれを許可する権限はありません。警視庁の担当には話してみますが、あまり期待はしないでください。
わかりました。そう伝えておきます。
Pressed down the receiver, hooked to hang up, then immediately dialed CID Section 1's direct line.
はい、捜査一課。
ああ、柳沼、時坂だが、今ちょっといいか。
何ですか?
Decided to ignore that blatant caution in his voice.
何でも朽木病院で精神科を受け持っている医師が。
Gave him the facts simple and clean.
なぜですか?
He didn't sound suspicious before, he sure as hell did now.
俺が知るかよ。送検のことがどこかから漏れたんじゃねえのか?
いや、そうではなく、僕が聞きたいのは、どうして今さら面談を望んでいるのかということです。
それこそ俺が知ったこっちゃねえよ。
She could have figured that if there was time to use her connections to set up a talk with him, it'd be before the prosecutor's office got their hands on him. I didn't know if he'd get a professional psych evaluation or not, but she probably knew there was no guarantee she'd be hired for that job either way.
わかりました。病院にはこちらから連絡します。
ああ、任せた。俺も今から行く。
I hung up and got ready to leave. Thought of an interview with Rokushiki filled me with dread. Feared that it wouldn't end well, no matter how the whole thing went down. All I could do was hope those worries were the product of an overactive imagination. I entered CID Section 1 to find Yaginuma seated at his desk, arms crossed.
どうした柳沼?
ええ、まあ。どう思いますか?
何がだよ?
I sat atop a nearby sofa and whipped out a smoke. Dr. Watanuki wasn't there yet from the look of things.
決まっているじゃないですか。
どう思うか聞かれてもな。さっき電話でも話した通り、この先機会がなくなるからだと思うぞ。
Picked the ashtray off the table, then lit my cigarette.
それとも何か、六式と通じているとでも思っているのか。
それを危惧しています。同じ朽木病院にいた精神科医ですからね。
Yaginuma picked a small stack of papers off his desk.
綿貫楓。朽木病院所属というわけではありませんが、深く関わっているのは間違いありません。
公認であれば接点はないんじゃないか。引き継ぎができるような状況ではなかったはずだしな。
Like I've been saying this whole time, as much as I love Kaede, she's got connections. She's connected to the grand scheme of things somehow. In what capacity, I still have no idea. But this clearly lends credence to this, the fact that she's so interested in speaking to Rokushiki before he's transferred off to the prosecutors, right? How now, all of a sudden, she wants to do this, even though she's had his job for 2 years now.
あいにくと僕は疑うのが仕事ですからね。
Aiden would pompously push his glasses up the bridge of his nose.
疑いの目を向けた結果、何事もなければそれでいいんです。
He wasn't wrong, that much was sure.
Watanuki医師が逃走の手助けをするとも考えられます。
Bro, she is
一挙手一投足に注意を払ってください。
How's she gonna do that?
わかったよ。
Better safe than sorry, I guess. Just then, almost as if on cue, Dr. Watanuki stepped through the door.
おや、君も来ていたのか。橋渡しだけでよかったのだが。
Kaede looked surprised to see me.
そういうわけにもいかないでしょう。何かあったら俺の責任にされてしまうんですから。
I smiled and shrugged in an attempt to pass that off as a joke. Aiden sure as hell couldn't have pulled that off, though. This was obviously no laughing matter.
で、こちらの方が警察の担当者かい？
Kaede pointed to Yaginuma.
警視庁捜査一課の柳沼警視です。
Watanuki Kaedeだ。よろしく。
They shook hands for a moment.
六式誠の面談ということで、いくつか注意事項を先にお伝えしてありますが。
もちろんだとも。凶器となり得る筆記具の持ち込み禁止、挑発の禁止、あとは直接事件に関わることの質問も禁止。
事件の聴取となると面倒が増えますからね。
Yaginuma shrugged. Couldn't tell if he'd said that in light of the prosecution or if he really did find it problematic.
了解した。気をつけることにしよ
う。ではこちらへ。我々も同席しますが、基本的に口は挟みませんので。
うん。
Yaginuma led us toward the interrogation room, Kaede not too far behind him. I trailed behind the pair. Nothing seemed unusual about her form from what I could tell. I wasn't saying that just because she was an unusual person to begin with. The interrogation room was still empty.
こちらにおかけください。
Yaginuma gestured to the chair closest to the door. I leaned back against the wall behind Kaede.
さて、楽しみだな。
Kaede turned around and looked up at me.
何を聞くつもりですか？
さあね、制限もされてしまったから世間話を中心にしてみるつもりだよ。
できれば時事的な話題も避けていただけますかね。ここ2年触れさせていませんので。
Yaginuma quickly chimed in.
そこまで来ると人権侵害ではないのかね。
彼の場合は何もかもが特別ですからね。
Indeed, this was a man who hadn't been indicted, much less handed over to the prosecutor's office, despite having been kept in custody for nearly 2 years now.
わかったよ。
Kaede shrugged. Just then, there was a knock at the door.
いいぞ。
The door opened, revealing a handcuffed Rokushiki accompanied by a guard.
おや。
That was the first sound he made. I did my best to ignore him. After all, I was the one here to talk to him today.
座れ。
Yaginuma gestured to the chair opposite Kaede's.
今日も随分と冷えますね。
Rokushiki remarked on the weather as if he didn't realize he was a prisoner. Definitely wasn't something you'd expect from a man who'd been behind bars for nearly 2 years.
それで、あなたは
Rokushiki regarded Kaede.
あなたの後任ですよ。現在、朽木病院の精神科を受け持っています。
ほほう。ということは
Rokushiki shot me a glance. That's probably his way of asking if she was Masaki's doctor. Even I could tell something that simple. Only he was always this easy to read. However, Rokushiki didn't say another word about the matter. It was almost as if he was mocking us.
今日は何のためにこちらへ来られたのですかな。
世間話ですよ。
Daddy set her elbows on the table and leaned forward.
ぜひともあなたのお話が聞きたいと思いましてね。
それは。
Rokushiki smirked.
しかし困りましたね。場所が場所だけに話せる内容など限られてしまいます。
It's not eavesdropping if we're standing out in the open, asshole. Bastard was probably trying to drag me and Yaginuma into the conversation.
先ほどお話しした通り、私はあなたの後任です。
彼のことですかな。
Rokushiki shot me another glance. He was so unsubtly alluding to Masaki that it hurt.
彼にどのような治療を行っていたのか。
彼に関して私が診察したのは数回しかありませんから。
Rokushiki grinned.
時間があればいろいろ試せたのですが、彼は素材としても優れていましたからね。
そうなる前で。
So he could have broken Masuke just like he did Kasaka and Shinjimamiya had I not unmasked him in time. What is a stroke of luck that Masuke had been broken to begin with then? Or was that exactly why Rokushiki considered him such a spectacular specimen?
ああ、そうだ。彼女の様子はどうでしょうか。
Michiru.
彼女
Kaede raised an eyebrow.
ご存知ありませんか。おそらくまだあの病院にいると思うのですが。
Rokushiki eyed me again. He must mean Michiru. That's what that faint hint of a smile told me anyway.
いえ、以前彼が随分と気にかけていたことを思い出しましてね。
ああ、なるほど。
Kaede's eyes lit up as if she finally connected the
そ
dots.
ちらについてはご心配なく。近頃は劇的に改善していますから。
ほほう、何か治療法を変えたのですかな。
Rokushiki grinned once again.
それを伝える必要はありません。
Interrupted before Dr. Watanuki had a chance to speak. While I trusted her not to say too much, I didn't want Rokushiki learning anything more than what was necessary. She was under no obligation to inform him of Michiru and her family situation after all. Hopefully my blatant interruption hadn't told Rokushiki too much, but you can never be positive with that guy.
まあいいでしょう。
Rokushiki relaxed and reclined in his chair.
そのくらいにしておくんだな。
Yaginuma emerged from the peanut gallery and spoke for the first time since Rokushiki had entered.
おや、いたのですか。
That was such bullshit, you'd have to be blind not to see it for the obvious goading that it was.
貴様は自分の置かれた立場を分かっているのか。
Why are you getting heated? An enraged Yaginuma slammed the table.
おい、ヤギヌマ。
However, Rokushiki simply smirked as if he were merely watching a play unfold before him.
もちろん理解していますよ。数日後には検察官送致される。
黙れ。
やめろ、ヤギヌマ。
I pinned Yaginuma's arms behind his back just as he was about to take a swing at Rokushiki. Why is Yaginuma so heated? I ignored Yaginuma's outburst and kept a close eye on Dr. Watanuki. Even she was unsettled to have seen things come so close to blows.
先輩、彼女を連れて退出してください。
しかし、お前。
Probably start beating the crap out of Rokushiki if I let go of him for even a second.
心配しなくとも落ち着きましたよ。後で厄介なことになるのも面倒ですからね。
I wasn't entirely convinced, but I let him go all the same.
Watanuki先生。
Kaede got up and left the room, warily eyeing Rokushiki all the while. I followed her, the guard waiting outside the door, taking my place inside.
何かわかりましたか。
Turned to Kaede after she'd taken a seat atop the visitor's sofa in the corner of CID Section 1.
いやいや、そう簡単なものじゃないよ。
Kaede shrugged and shook her head.
もう少し続けたかったが、ちょうどよく途切れてくれたよ。彼と対峙するのはとても疲れる。
A moment later, she stretched out, hot.
私程度の人間が分析してやろうなどとは。
いろいろと制限がかけられていました。
仕方ないことさ。何しろあちらは類いまれなる凶悪犯だ。
Kaede laughed for saying something rather unbefitting of a psychiatrist.
どうせ君も私が彼を逃がしに来たと思っているのだ。
まさか。
I shook my head.
嘘はつかなくていい。返事が一瞬遅れたことが何よりも雄弁に物語っているよ。
そうは言われましても、疑っていると言っても素直に答えてはくれませんよね。
うん、それもそうだ。では私が今身の潔白を主張しても意味。
そこは主張していただきたいのですがね。
心配しなくてもいい。あれを外に解き放つつもりはない。
I didn't know whether to trust her or not. I ultimately decided to place my faith in her. I could imagine that she simply enjoyed playing devil's advocate.
一つお伺いしたいことがあります。六式の裁判が始まるという噂をどこで？
Who'd squealed? That was the big question here. After all, the news could also reach potential Rokushiki sympathizers.
誰と言われてもな。精神医学会の集まりで流れていた噂だよ。
Kaede crossed her arms and smiled.
もっとも自然発生的な噂だ。状況を考えれば誰でも思いつくさ。同じことを言い続けていればいつか必ずそうなるからね。
出席者の一覧などはありますか？
集まりとは言ってもただの飲み会だったからな。何人かは名刺を受け取っているが、後で警察に提出しよ
いえ、直接こちらにいただけますか。
なるほど。情報漏洩の大元は。
Kaede took a good look around the office.
噂の信憑性が高いほどその可能性は上がります。
Everyone knew that Rokushiki would be going on trial eventually, so it was no surprise there had been rumors of that floating about for a while. Still, I can only imagine info that had come from a rat on the inside for them to be so accurate about the timing. Clearly, Yaginuma was not as good at his job as he thought.
精神鑑定などでこちらに出入りしている医師も多い。こちらとしては、いや、警察もだろうが。
そうでしょうね。
I was one of the few non-cops out there who had access to some of their information. As such, it made total sense that I'd look fishy.
しかし私は自分がそのようなことをしていないのを知っています。
But I know I'm not that good
無
a
論
person,
証
so
明は難しいのでしょうが。
まあそのあたりは互いに信頼し合わなければ始まらないだろう
put
さ。
something in you. Kaede shrugged and glanced toward the entrance. There stood Yaginuma, finally back from the interrogation room.
ヤギ沼、
ご心配なく。六式には丁重にお引き取り願いましたよ。
Yaginuma took his seat, popped a cig between his lips, and lit it.
まったく。本当に世間話程度でしかありませんでしたね。
最初からそう言っていただろう。
Kaede smiled with good grace.
綿貫先生、精神鑑定が行われた場合にどうなるか。
That monster would be set loose on the world once again if things went to shit and he was declared unaccountable for his actions.
そこまで読めたわけではないが、心神喪失状態にあったとは到底考えられないね。
当然です。そのような判断は下させませんよ。
As reassuring as it was to hear that, the fact remained that the case would all but be completely out of his hands once it was handed over to the prosecutor's office.
それよりも、綿貫先生、今回の件についてはくれぐれも内密にお願いしますよ。
特に検察官装置の話題についてはだね。
不測の事態が発生した場合、何かしらの協力を要請することがあるかもしれませんので。
回りくどいね。はっきりと機密情報の漏洩の疑いでしょっぴくと言いたまえよ。
そう決めつけてしまうと視野を狭めることになってしまいますからね。捜査の基本ですよ。
Yaginuma dramatically spread his arms, almost as if he were some sort of court jester. But rude as the whole thing was, Kaede just smiled, not looking offended in the slightest.
まあせいぜいその不測の事態が発生しないことを祈ろう。私が漏らしていない証明をすることはとても困難だからね。
Kaede rose to her feet.
では、わざわざすまなかったね、時坂君。私は帰るとするよ。ああ、見送りは結構。
She held out her hand just as I started to get up, then left the office on her own.
精神科医というのはあんな連中ばかりなんですか？
Yaginuma grumbled as he plopped down on the sofa, taking her place.
それはないだろう。
At least I hope they weren't.
彼女に疑わしい点はありましたか？
Yaginuma stubbed out his cigarette and turned toward me.
あのままだよ。あからさまに怪しすぎてわからん。
I shrugged inside myself.
用心はすべきでしょうね。
Oh, I'm keeping both eyes closely on her. Yaginuma crossed his arms. Her theatrical gestures had seemed both genuine and like she was trying to pull a fast one on us at the same time. All I could really do was pray that all the stuff surrounding Rokushiki ended without incident. Ha! Though obviously I was also aware that I couldn't afford to be so optimistic whenever that bastard was concerned.